Journalist Steve Rosen knew Eddie Van Halen going way back to, well, before the first Van Halen album, 1977. And he got to know him professionally, but most notably, he got to know him personally. They were friends, they hung out. And really, you couldn't hang out with Eddie Van Halen without noticing some of his vices. Steve Rosen on Eddie Van Halen on Rock History Music. Is smoking bothered you, huh?
Oh man, that was horrible. It was horrendous. Look, Ed did a lot of drugs. I did a lot of drugs with him, you know. It was cocaine. It wasn't heroin. It wasn't crack. It wasn't meth. It was, you know, not trying to, you know, promote the benign effects of cocaine, but, you know, I mean, unless, and I hate to be morbid, unless somebody ingests just a ton of cocaine at one time, you really don't hear of a lot of strictly cocaine overdoses. I mean, it comes with drinking, and again, I'm not trying to downplay it at all. But yes, did a lot of drugs. He drank a lot. I mean, he drank Schlitz, the tall cans of Schlitz, but more than that, he was a vodka drinker, you know, and he'd drink out of the bottle. And I mean, he drank a lot. I knew early on that the cigarette, and I'm not trying to be prophetic or anything, but I knew. I mean, I knew, and I write about it early on. I knew those cigarettes would ultimately be the thing that caused him the most anguish and ill health and sickness. And Ed would tell me, you know, he started smoking, you know, grew up in a European household. I believe his father smoked, you know, so I think he started smoking and drinking when he was 12 or 13. Man, you can't do that. You know, and I hope you're going to live to be past the age of 68. So it was horrible. I mean, always had a cigarette. You know, some of those things where a cigarette would still be going and he'd light the other one and there'd be, you know, two half-lit cigarettes in the ashtray, man. I remember out in his car. I mean, the ashtrays overflowing. You know, he'd be over at my house. The first thing he'd ask was, "Hey, man, you got an ashtray?" And he goofed. I have a chapter called candle ashtray, and I had this big hollowed out candle, and it got hollowed out because of the wick burning down. And I used to let him use that because I thought it was cool. I remember him remarking to a buddy who was my songwriting buddy, and I write about that as well. Edward coming over and playing guitars on one of my songs. And he goes, "Yeah, man, every time I come in here, all I can smell is that damn candle ashtray," you know. I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, man, I wish, and I write about it, I wish he'd never smoked. Or he'd smoked not as much, you know, because, and the weird thing, the dichotomy, he never appeared unhealthy. You know, he never had the smoker's pall, you know, he didn't look gray and from drinking, you know, alcoholics get that paunch. My God, the guy was fit, he was trimmed, his arms, you know, he was ripped, you know, he always had great color. So man, I think he was a really durable guy, really, you know, almost, I don't know, indestructible, man, but cigarette. You know, we all know what kind of killers those are. So very sad. I mean, he died way too young, man.
I remember being completely, like, when I announced his death, that was the biggest video, I think, the first time I reached 500,000. And I remember going, God, like, I know who Van Halen is. I had a lot of their albums, but I remember I was doing a live stream. People just grabbed on. I'm going, what the hell? I have 1,000 people on. Then I went, I got 4,000 people on right now. That's never happened to me. No more than 1,000. But I remember I felt it. I went, wow, I just came on to announce it. It's
terrible.
And I've noticed this with musician friends and artist friends, that they would, like painters, a few that I knew, that they could, like, as you said, recite, you know, every member of the band that was in there and every song and who wrote them, but they'd forget stuff, you know, in normal life. Hyper focus over here.
Exactly, man. I could never understand what that was. There's one part in the book when I asked Ed, I go, Ed, remember you were talking about like virtually one of the first songs or first riffs you ever wrote? And he goes, and then he plays it. And so we're talking at that point. I mean, he was 12 or 13, and I don't know how old he would have been there. I can't remember where it was, 30 or 40. I mean, we're talking many, many decades earlier. That he can remember. He can't remember me being with him at the Guitar Center Rock Walk induction, where he was inducted along with Les Paul, and me introducing him to Les Paul. Not only could he not remember me not introducing him, he didn't remember I was there. And we're talking one day after that induction. He never remembered me introducing him at various points in time to Ricky Blackmore and Billy Gibbons. He never remembered him saying, yeah, man, call me tomorrow at 1. I would call at 1. He goes, oh, yeah, he had no recollection of that. He goes, oh, I'm going out. Call me in 2 hours. And I call him back in 2 hours. He goes, well, why are you calling back in 2 hours? He never remembered any of the phone calls. It was amazing. And I could only chalk it up, like you suggested, John, that, yeah, man, his head is filled with, the next riff he's, mentally working on, and, the tour coming up. And it was a strange phenomenon. I mean, it was really weird. But yeah, I mean, it was like that from the first time I met him, really. Cause like you say, I mean, I don't think he remembered meeting me previously when we met at the Day on the Green the second time. I really don't believe he remembered the whiskey meeting at all, or me interviewing him on the phone, which would have only been a few months earlier. So I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe he remembered everything and just never showed it. I don't know. But I don't think he ever remembered, really.
Tone Chaser is the brand new book by Steve Rosen, who knew Eddie Van Halen going way back to 1977. It's a great book on so many different artists. Ronnie Montrose, an interesting run-in with him. Paul McCartney, Joe Cocker, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, most notably Bon Scott, Ritchie Blackmore. Now that's a colorful story. But mostly Eddie Van Halen, who he knew, like I said, going way, way back before the first Van Halen album was ever released. There's so much inside information in this book. It's one of my favorite books that I've read in a long time, and I really enjoy talking to Steve. His stories are magical, really. There'll be links in the description where you can pick it up. Remember, if you want to contribute to the channel, if you want to make a donation, there are links on every one of our videos to PayPal. You can make a PayPal donation. You can join our Patreon, get early access to all our videos. But remember, subscribe to the channel, like our videos, comment on them, and share them on social media. This is John Beaudin. More from Steve Rosen coming up in the next 2-3 days. This is Rock History Music. Take care.